And what I found is so many people are chasing this cup that kind of altered their experience,
their perceptions on coffee.
Yeah. And for some people, it was like a gas station. They were going. It's always tied to some significant moment in their life.
Welcome to HenHouse Unruffled, an audio companion to the beers of HenHouse Brewing Company. Each episode, we'll take a deeper dive into each beer's concept, recipe, can art, sensory, and more with your hen host, Fridge.
What up? What's up, Unruffled listeners? It's Fridge, your host for the HenHouse Unruffled podcast. Today, my Unruffled co-host and I get to talk with Max Bretzke, the co-founder of Land and Water Coffee and recent collaborator on two unique beers here at HenHouse Brewing Company, Fresh Pots and the Delicious Little Devil. We take a deep dive on coffee, the history of land and water, and the striking similarities between coffee and craft beer. Without further ado, let's get it going. All right, we're here with Max Bretzke, the founder of Land and Water Coffee.
Yes.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Of course, man. Thank you for coming on Unruffled.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Super excited to talk about our beer collabs and to learn a little bit more about Land and Water Coffee. Would you mind introducing yourself in your own words for the listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Max. The co-founder, I should say. Myself and my business partner founded Land and Water Coffee back in 2016 and kind of hit the ground running and been going hard ever since.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you in the tasting rooms back in the day.
Yeah.
Around 2016,
the local coffee
2017.
Scene. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was all throughout the local coffee scene for years. Yeah. I started coffee back in 2008 when the economic downturn, it's probably the formal way of saying it, when the recession was going on, and had just finished college and just needed a job to pay the bills, or at least pay some of the bills. And so I jumped into Starbucks, and that kind of started my whole coffee journey.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, how do you make the jump from Starbucks to roasting?
Yeah, I always kind of considered it almost like that the coffee industry is like one giant organization. So I always had tried to see, the different areas that I wanted to get to, and then see the local companies around here that I might be able to fit into that. And so I didn't even like coffee, didn't drink coffee really till I was about 22, and found myself at Starbucks not liking anything that I was being told, that was good or that I should like. The only stuff I liked had lots of cream and sugar in it. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. But when I tasted a cup of coffee from another like small kind of micro roaster or like, specialty coffee roaster, it really altered my idea of what you could do with coffee. So I got really into brewing coffee, and that led me to the stark realization that yes, brewing matters, but it also has a lot to do with the roast. And then I started roasting, and then came to the stark realization that, that's important, but you have to have good coffie and roast it well and brew it well, to have that desirable end cup. So it was just a realization that took a few years to really sink in. But yeah, I went from Starbucks, had a manager there that I really liked, and she moved over to Pete's, and I was just getting married at the time, and I had the opportunity to get that $1 an hour raise and be a shift manager. Yeah. So I had to take that, and so I jumped in there. And then one of the customers actually was opening a shop and asked me if I wanted to come manage and open the shop for him, and took that opportunity. Again, just always looking for opportunities, seeing it as like this one big conglomerate corporation, and took that job. And then from there, I went on to TaylorMade, now Taylor Lane. Mm-hmm. Then I was a roaster over at a company called Melody Coffee for a little bit, for about 3 years. And then, I came over to start Land and Water after that. So
awesome.
Do you remember where that aha cup of coffee was?
Where it was from? Yeah, it was from Ritual Roasters, actually, in San Francisco, California. Yeah, no, it was awesome. I was going out doing a little camping retreat with a few friends, And one of them wanted to run us through Ritual, and it was the first time I had seen pour over too. It was like, whoa, what's going on here? And kind of the first time I was exposed to the, I don't want to say the subculture coffee community, but it was just really kind of taken off. And then really started hanging around Flying Goat a lot after that because they were kind of the local heroes and really making some incredible coffees. So
You remember what style pour over the vessel they were using? Like, it was like a big Chemex, or was it? Yeah, one of those.
Yeah, it was a little V60.
Oh, the V60s.
They were kind of ones that popular. Well, probably I'm not a coffee historian in the local scene, but they were the first ones I saw that were using V60s, and I know Blue Bottle in the early days was using like the Bee House drippers that have the flat bottom versus the slanted cone style of the Japanese V60 dripper. So yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I, of course, had to buy one of those. I thought the magic was in the pour over, and started diving into that, and then went down, found like the lightest roast you could get at Starbucks, and was still like,
not as good.
Yeah.
It starts with the fidelity of the ingredients, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've used a V60 in my barista days myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty forgiving.
For those of us who haven't been a barista since the early aughts, what's a V60?
Yeah, it's just like a cone vessel that is glass, and you put your filter in there, and that's where you would pour your pour over. You've seen them.
Like a single cup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And it has like these little stylized kind of curved grooves
like
in
S
the
grooves in it.
Yeah, and so you can see the bubbles escaping back up. So whether or not it's just like marketing or just design, they do say that that's kind of one way to see if you're doing it correctly. And then they make their own paper filters too that actually ends up being really important in the brewing process.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me almost of like how people would like present like a Randall in the beer world, just like, oh, this is cool to see like the beer go through these hops in this glass container, sort of similar vibes to that. Actually, I do see a lot of similarities in craft beer and coffee, at least for me. I came up at a specialty coffee and beer place, and really like the two cultures were building, at least in my own community, at the same time.
Totally. The holy trinity of Imbibe magazine: cocktails, beer, coffee.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think they do some wine coverage, but I don't read it.
Well, wine's a little interesting in that regard because there isn't the point of sale manipulation, right? Like, and there's less in beer than in cocktails or coffee, but I think that's like you just articulated, right? Like, there's so many places where things can go wrong or right in the process, and like, it's like if you screw up the first link in the chain and you've got you're sourcing garbage coffee, there's not a whole lot you can do. If you screw up the second link in the chain, you've got great coffee, but you over roast it or improperly roast it, not a whole lot the next person can do. And then you can do everything right, and the person at the point of the sale can screw up, and it all falls apart. That definitely exists in beer, whether you're talking about clean lines or keeping the beer too cold or letting the beer get old. So I do see that's really parallel. Wine is fairly bulletproof at the point of sale.
For sure.
You have to really, really be screwing some things up to ruin a good glass of wine at the point of sale.
Keep it in an 85-degree closet or something.
Honestly, like
even that,
as long as you don't serve it at that temp, you're probably fine. Like it's like wine is, got that acidity and that booze and that tannin and all that stuff that makes it crazy durable.
I was just actually talking with a roaster friend of mine about this so we talked about brewing, we talked about, we didn't even talk about grinding. That's another issue. Roasting, sourcing the beans. But what's really frustrating is that, Atlanta Water, we will profile a coffee, or I don't know if that's a similar term in beer or not, but if we're profiling a coffee, then we're putting it through its paces and we're trying to see what it has. We're looking for the boundaries of like, where is too dark for this roast? Where does it become roasty? Because like Atlanta Water, I try and roast the coffee so that it's fully developed, but it's not having any kind of ashy or roasty flavor that is kind of in the aftertaste. Really trying to just represent the coffee region individually so people could taste, even though they're so close, in Ethiopia and a Kenya, or even like a Uganda and a Kenya, and how they can be vastly different, even though they may share a border. But to get back to what I was saying, like, we'll roast a coffee and profile it with our water. Right. And then I've shipped coffee to the East Coast for an account that I was wanting to work with. and they gave me feedback, and they're like, yeah, no, this coffee is just like, it's garbage. Like it's so roasty and it's so ashy, and you're like, how? And it comes down to the water. So like the different TDS meters within the water, and it's going to extract at different rates. It's going to carry different flavors into the cup. So it's really something that the coffee industry, like when there's competition, they solve that by having one consistent water that everyone trains with and profiles with and brews with, so that when they go to the competition, then they know they're going to be using that same water. But it's this really kind of interesting thing that we started brewing on home coffee brewers with tap water for our customers, just to see, okay, how does this taste? So we think it's great, but this is kind of a lab, tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment that we can get the best out of this coffee, but we want to make sure that the home consumer can still have a good cup. So that was a really interesting experiment, and found some good things and some bad things through doing that.
I mean, that parallels beer history almost exactly.
Yeah.
There are styles of beer that prior to the ability to chemically manipulate your water, you just wouldn't attempt in certain areas.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm ignorant to what the ideal water chemistry for coffee brewing is. Do you guys, like, let's say at your shop, is it all like DO filtered water with almost nothing left in it, or are there certain minerals you do want?
We're kind of, it's a funny saying, but we're kind of in between filters at the moment. We're using one filter that we really like at our roastery that has a consistent TDS, and we're getting ready to open a new shop that will also become our new roastery. It's going to be like a retail / wholesale facility where people can see the production aspect of coffee and the retail side, but that's like a whole house filter that's reverse osmosis. And it gives us a little reader that we can see after it's filtered, and then like regular city water goes back into it. It's a small percentage, it's like 20 or 30%, but they need that for the mineral content, because I believe reverse osmosis will remove all of the the mineral content.
It's basically distilled water.
It's basically distilled, yeah. So you have to remineralize it. So it's just like a little 30 or 20% bypass that remineralizes that water. And so we're kind of testing both. And it's really interesting that making espresso can be a little bit different than brewing coffee, and you might want, different amounts of minerals in there for each one. I can get lost in the weeds, but I've also come back to a place where I'm a little more settled down and like, okay, like as long as like grinding fresh, using filtered water, I'm doing the best that I can do, But some people are like, no, everything has to be perfect before I make a cup. So, yeah.
Well, you go back to your North Star of sensory, right? If it's tasting good, you've done this long enough, like you feel confident from the palate experience, right?
For sure. Yeah.
I just love listening to other nerds nerd out. Like I'm following along. I'm a little lost. Coincidentally, I was just listening to a podcast that mentioned TDS. So I know we're talking about total dissolved solids.
That's correct, yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I learned that an hour ago. Now it's super
awesome.
Relevant to what I'm doing.
I think I saw you listening to that podcast.
You absolutely did. God, it's just so cool. Like usually this is what I sound like to other people. And I'm super enjoying it.
And I was blown away when I saw that this was in the coffee industry. There was, I think, the movement that happened. I mean, it was East and West Coast, and also I know that there's been huge play in like Norway. Australia has an incredible coffee culture. There's
fascinating.
Yeah, pretty much like, I don't want to say everywhere, but
anywhere you find Tom's shoes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, it's turned into this. Obviously, it's been worldwide for a long time, but using these different instruments and having these micro roasteries, they're everywhere, and people use calibration equipment a lot more than I do. Like, there's ways to read the moisture content of the green beans so that you can tell exactly when they're kind of starting to fall off the shelf.
Right.
So there's a lot of really interesting stuff out there to make sure that your coffee's really tasting exactly how you want it to taste.
Yeah, I mean, the cultures are pretty similar. You have people that are just like diehard fans that just need to have like this certain brand of coffee, maybe, like they're loyalists there. Or you get someone that just like really likes to drink coffee. It's kind of similar there. And then you get the folks that really nerd out on it. Like the home brewers, the home roasters. all over the world, there's going to be somebody that's like, I really love coffee. I'm going to learn everything I can about it.
Yep.
Kind of the same with beer, too.
Yep.
And I was hearing you talk about how the coffee presents in different ways depending on how long you roast it or how long you brew it or what temp the water is.
Yep.
All of these things sort of parallel back to beer for me. You can see that happen with like how long you're kilning your malts or to give you different qualities and characters, and how you're introducing the hops into the recipe, when is really important for how it's going to present at the end.
Yep.
It's just really cool to me. That kind of feels like sister industries.
Hugely.
Think about a draft system, man.
Yeah.
Like you can do everything right first and second half.
Right.
And then third half, I guess, somebody's, pushing your beer with 1.7 volumes of CO2 on it or whatever, and
Breaking my
you're
heart.
gonna have really foamy beer at certain points, and then you're gonna have flat beer at the end, and that's gonna completely change the way it tastes. I remember when I first started working in like serious beer nerd spots, there were some old school serious beer nerds that wouldn't drink draft.
Wow.
They're just like, I only want bottle conditioned because
Yeah.
I do not trust you.
Yeah.
And in Belgium, there were a lot of breweries would go around and they would straight up tell an account, you're not ready for draft.
Yeah.
You can carry the bottles, keep them cold, pour them for people into the fucking our glass.
Yeah.
Right. Catch you pouring that in someone else's glass, you will never get the bottle again.
Right.
Better be a branded glass, damn it.
Yeah.
No, it's serious. And in those bars in Belgium, they'll wait. Okay, I ordered a Roquefort 6, and they're out of their Roquefort glasses. They're all on the floor. You wait.
Yeah.
Wow.
They don't play out there.
Like,
you either order something else or you wait until they can clean a Roquefort glass.
when it's available, we'll get it to you.
Yeah. And so I do see that level. I think it's really interesting with coffee because I think even more so, like one thing we talk to all the time about beer, usually around like diversity stuff, is that like literally everyone drinks beer. Like way more of the world drinks beer than drinks wine.
Sure.
Then there's coffee, which like for real.
Yeah.
I suppose you have tea cultures.
Yeah. You have like China. The coffee movement is growing there, but still, it's predominantly tea.
Like there's no hemisphere or corner of the earth where you won't find people very serious about coffee.
Totally.
And then how it's so much more like a routine part of the day. Like I suppose there's the getting off work pint of beer that's part of a lot of people's routine. But like, most workers, like the morning routine involves a cup of coffee. And the idea that something that is that commonplace could also be as meticulously fretted over.
Yeah, sure.
Is like difficult to reconcile in some ways, but also kind of beautiful.
And through so many different conversations with people, because part of what we do and what I do with Land and Water is we're really trying to find just like the sweet spot with what people like, because you can do so many different things with coffee. You can have it be wild and fruity, you can have it be really citrusy, you can have it be really malty or nutty. We're really trying to find the sweet spot with people with what they like before they buy an individual bag, hoping that every single bag that they have would, not only enjoy, but even like heighten their coffee experience, or not their experience, but their relationship with coffee, I guess, if you could use that. And what I found is so many people are chasing this cup that kind of altered their experience,
Their perceptions on coffee.
Yeah. And for some people, it was like a gas station. They were going. It's always tied to some significant moment in their life. That's my theory on Kona coffee. By the way, is that it's like well, sure, that was the best cup of coffee you ever had. You're sitting in paradise, right? And you're sipping it at the farm. Kona, is a fairly high scoring coffee, but there are other coffees that score higher than, but it's like, that's why you were, with your loved one, at the coffee plantation sipping a cup of it. So that's why it was the best.
What does a good cherry need? Because we talk a lot about the different parts of the world that are good at cultivating hops and are bad at it, and kind of what people try to do or cool regions you can get it from. And that's a lot less true with barley. Like barley is much hardier than a hop, and you can get great barley in like a lot more places in the world. What's up with coffee? Because I see Ethiopia pop up a lot. Kona pops up a lot. Kenya, I don't know. Anybody doing California coffee? Yeah,
we have some farms popping up in Santa Barbara.
Wow.
And you have these little microclimates that are just right for growing coffee. A lot of them are land that was growing citrus, a lot of lemon and avocado farms that got
Interesting.
torn up. And usually they're growing what's called the geisha varietal. Geisha varietal is coming from a very old varietal of coffee that is from Ethiopia. So it's a region in Ethiopia, rumored to be some of the oldest trees and oldest varietals, in existence. And so people are taking that plant and replanting it in different parts of the world. There's at least 10 or 15 that I know of that have different geisha varietals, from Colombia, Costa Rica, Panama. It grows really well. Where they're all growing this geisha varietal, and then they're doing what's called a natural process with it. It is basically just drying the cherry around the seed, letting it dry out either on a raised bed or some other bed process, and then milling it, and you're left with a seed that has kind of had the time to let all the juices and the flavors in the cherry dry, into the seed and around the seed. And it just gives it a wildly different flavor than a washed process coffee, which is going to be your other spectrum, like, one side of the spectrum and then the other side of the spectrum. So wash, you're going to get it way more controlled, and then natural, you're going to get, I say, probably like stupidly because I'm not a farmer or a producer, but you get what you get. But it seems like it's a less controlled process, whereas washed is a very controlled process, and you can kind of dictate. But to answer your question, altitude is very important.
I was going to say Santa Barbara's atypically close to sea level to be growing coffee, right?
Exactly, yeah. So altitude becomes very important.
Fascinating.
Obviously, the minerals in the soil, you find it really popular coffee spots being around volcanoes. And then, the tropics, in between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, hugging the equator belt is
it's got to be pretty near to
vital.
the equator generally, right? Yeah.
Yep. So just that kind of magical mixture.
Interesting.
Of altitude, soil, and then in between those two tropics. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when we talk about hops grow in a band, just like that. And it's true above the equator and below the equator, the same degrees will get you great hops.
It's
neat.
It's fascinating, and I've known people that mess around with like one little plant here, in the Bay Area, or just in their backyard, and they'll be able to get enough to pick, and maybe make a cup of coffee with it. So you can grow it, but but it's pretty fascinating that it really lends itself to the Central South Americas. You do have North America with Mexico. Mexico's growing some great coffee these last 5-10 years. And, you have a huge portion of East Africa that grows really good coffee, and that is due to higher altitudes.
Cool.
Western Africa will still grow coffee, but that's a different varietal. It's kind of broken up into Arabica and Robusta. Those are the two main varietals, and Robusta grows at a lower altitude to where it's something that you can sell it. So
and it lends itself more to a darker roast generally, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the one that it has a higher caffeine content. So I've never actually worked with it, so I don't exactly know.
Yeah.
I have tasted it, but I've never myself purchased it and tried to mess around with it. But
most of the coffee folks are working with in the higher end coffee shops are going to be lighter roast, Arabica. Varietal. That's awesome. When does fermentation come into play? Is it during the wash, if I recall correctly? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the wash, that processing part of it. And people are getting so creative with that process now. They're doing like pineapple fermentation. They're putting like mangoes and stuff in during the process, and they're just really pushing the limits, I guess, as to like what can we do with this, you know? So you don't get necessarily that pineapple or mango flavor coming through. At least I never have.
You get a different set of bacteria and
exactly,
yeast,
exactly, exactly. So it's pretty cool.
Probably more acidity too, coming from the fruits, or
possibly, yeah. I mean, it's most high scoring coffee is going to have acidity coming through. So I don't know if it was in there before it got the pineapple or the mango in there, but yeah, it's
what-
pretty fascinating.
So the sugar source is whatever was keeping the bean alive, right?
Yeah, like the outside of the seed.
And do you need to introduce yeast or bacteria for fermentation, or is that also naturally just out in the...
I think it's just part of it, It's like
I'm not 100% on that. I don't think that they introduce other, but I'm not 100%. I have not been at one of those. I've tasted them when they come through, and I've tasted the green from the different importers that I've worked with, but I've never asked that question.
super cool. And it's only what like a couple day process generally for the wash?
Yeah, it's not.
It's like
yeah,
pretty
not-
quick
not too
fermentation, but there is fermentation in your coffee beans.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
So let's talk about the coffees in these two beers.
Yeah.
Given everything you just said,
Yeah.
and all of the like work that goes into making a coffee taste a specific way, why did you let us put it in a beer?
Okay, so really, I have been waiting for a beer to use like a really excellent coffee for some time, and I did a project a while back. I actually did a fun project with Old Possum Brewing Company here in
Yeah, the
Santa
neighbors.
Rosa.
Love those guys.
Yeah. And did a fun project with them where they made a coffee porter. They called it, I think, the Santa Rosa or Sonoma Porter. And they used our Godspeed blend. But I've always tasted that more stout flavor. And that's fine. Never knocked a stout. But I've always known it could be better or it could be a little more lending itself to how these coffees were created, to kind of let some of that coffee flavor shine that's inherently in that coffee. So when you guys reached out and you wanted to do something, I was interested to see, okay, well, what are they going to be looking for? And it was kind of everyone in the room picked the Ethiopia that's in this the fresh pots.
Nice.
That was thrilling for me, because then I knew I'd finally be able to taste something with one of these single origin coffees in a lighter style beer.
So what are the tasting notes before going into this beer that you would describe? Like if we were just to taste this coffee made in the way you like to make it.
Yep.
It's
What are
your
the tasting notes you're looking
Ethiopian Yirgacheffe blend. Is that-
Yeah. It's called the Worka Sakaro, and that comes. It's like from the producer. A lot of times you can buy these little farm specific lots, but a lot of times what you're getting when I buy coffee, what's called a single origin is it's a processing station that's in a region in that area, and you have a lot of the family farms and the local farmers that are growing 50, 60, 100 trees, and they're bringing that coffee at harvest down to the processing platform, and then it's graded, and then the processing starts, and the processing process begins. And then they're paid out for how good their coffee is. So you can trace it all the way to the farm, but they have to be a little more more of a
operation.
business. Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. And when we get to pick our hops, because we're at a certain level where we're able to do hop selection, you can buy like a whole row of one variety of hop that might be presenting in a ideal way for that brewery for their need. So that's kind of cool. Another similarity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yes, I knew you guys would do something with it. I think if I knew more about beer, that I would probably be headed towards. So I was excited to see these two put into a beer project that especially like with fresh pots that I hadn't tasted before. So yeah, and the Ethiopia was a perfect choice. So you guys chose one.
So what are the flavors you are glad we didn't lose?
Here, let me see. One thing that Ethiopia is, they kind of will span the spectrum of flavors, whether it's apricot, that's in there sometimes, or some other type of stone fruit. You can get some of those tropical fruit flavors, papaya sometimes, but what you really have to do with Ethiopia is, because they tend to be more of the lighter body and more delicate, is to make sure it's developed fully or developed more than not others, but it just needs to be properly developed. I don't want to say like fully developed, because I think to fully develop a coffee is probably to take it too far, but it needs to be developed. So there's a sweetness in there. There's like a brown sugar flavor that I'm tasting in here that's really, really nice. And yeah, definitely having not necessarily like peach or nectarine that comes through, but here, let me have another.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting stone fruit, but I don't know if it's the yeast phenolic quality that we're getting from the French Saison yeast that we use in a lot of our Saisons that sort of sends out this like lemon pepper-like thing. I was wondering, is there like a citric quality that's being complemented from the coffee in this beer as well?
Yeah, there's definitely like a Meyer lemon, a sweeter lemon quality to the Ethiopia that we tasted throughout the roasting process and how long we've been roasting it. But yeah, there is a almost not mango, but just a more tropical fruit flavor that is kind of shining through. That's really nice.
Almost like underripe pineapple or something too. Yeah. Oftentimes, like you were saying before, coffee is a complementary flavor that's introduced into more malt-forward beers. So it's really fun and interesting with fresh pots specifically to be able to get a coffee pairing that's more based on a yeast-driven beer.
Yeah, it's what makes fresh pot so special. Love this beer.
Like what you were talking about with the stout, and we're going to talk about a stout in a minute here, but what's ironic about coffee always going into beers like that is most of the coffee flavors, like the beer ingredients you use to make a beer like that, lend a lot of flavors that you can get that people typically associate with coffee.
Right.
This sort of like third and fourth wave coffee where people are, much more nuanced in the flavors they want in their coffee and are pulling fruity notes and spicy notes. For me, I definitely do get the apricot, underripe orange or tart orange like flavors from this too. But I'm really locked in on that, like the flavors that could be coming from the phenolic fermentation character and could be coming from the coffee. There's like a herbal, like kind of green tea like flavor in this.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
That
like
I
a
think
bit of lemon in your tea kind of too.
Yeah, but it's just really, really difficult to separate. Like, okay, is this like I would love to have the control of like this coffee right here and Saison without coffee in it right here. And trying to see like where the sum is greater than the parts, or at least different than the parts, because there's this really, really complicated spiciness or herbal spiciness that is just really cool and keeps me coming back. Like when you guys were first talking, I was like trying really hard to pay attention, but I was just smelling my glass. And it's a really, really cool, these sort of deep conversation about how you make flavor and all the ways that it can go wrong, I think was very appropriate for this beer, because I do think the right way to appreciate this beer is with like a lot of attention. We try to make those beers that you can ignore and still have a great time with, and I think if you did that with fresh pots, you'd be fucking up. Like this is one where you should like
you want to dive deep on this beer for sure.
This is not a movie you watch with your cell phone out, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, not to say that you can't chug this beer, but you probably shouldn't. This is a beer for sipping.
Yeah, that second or third or fourth pint, then start talking to your friends. But pints 1 and 2, just silence and study.
No, it's neat. And I actually haven't had this coffee cold brewed with that lighter acid brew that you guys did with it, and so I would like to try it cold brewed next to the beer, see what kind of comes through. But
it's throwing a ton of honey too.
Definitely honey.
Yeah,
definitely
like
Yeah.
Some like toasty honey flavors coming through. Yeah.
Very, very cool, man.
Carly, our sensorizer in chief, she also offers up some jasmine flower, mango even.
Oh, there we go.
And
The
milk
mango,
chocolate, which I totally get.
Yeah.
She said milk chocolate, huh?
Yeah.
And those are the jasmine-y is a pretty universal characteristic for Yirgacheffe coffees. So
fascinating.
And green tea.
Yeah.
And green tea, yeah. And the chocolatiness is, I would always describe the body as kind of a like milk chocolatey.
Right.
It's not necessarily, it's not like you're drinking a cup of milk chocolate, but there's this kind of creaminess to it that comes through. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not getting milk chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, like milk chocolate in the U.S. versus like Europe's totally different, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You get that little bit of butyric acid in the States. That's what makes our chocolate unedible to some people.
Sure. Yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me that Parmesan cheese.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Shout out to our chocolate making friends in Windsor who are keeping the butyric acid out of their chocolate.
Yeah, I mean, in the brewing industry, we're anti-butyric acid, unless we're talking Scotch ales.
Right.
Right.
And even then, that's just diacetyl.
Even then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, just keep it out of the brewery, because if it's in the brewery, it's most likely coming out of you in the bathroom, and that's a mess for someone to have to clean up.
Yeah.
Dirty draft lines can be a source of butyric acid.
Oh yeah,
Right.
that's right. Well, we don't have those either.
That's right.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to our To the pièce de resistance, Jinx.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would say that the fresh pots is a pièce de resistance in its own right.
Fresh pots. I mean, we should say. I think we've done other.
This
Fresh
is my
Pots
favorite
podcasts.
batch
Yeah.
in a while.
This is my favorite since I think batch 2.
Yeah.
You're never ever going to be able to get back in touch with how shocking this beer was the first time you had it.
Totally.
Like, I remember serving this before I worked here and doing like the blindfold thing,
Yeah.
and people would smell it and be like, "Oh, you gave me a porter."
Right.
And then they drink it and be like, "What the fuck?" Or
What is
take
this?
the blindfold off and be like, "What the fuck?" And I love that. But this, because the coffee isn't porter-like, right? You're not getting roast and chocolate from the coffee. You're getting like all these things we say, honey, mango.
Right.
It's really a bewildering first sniff, you know? Like, I think it'd be very difficult to blind this. Yeah, it's cool that it resulted in, it's not coffee or beer right off the top, right? It's
Right.
just like, what is this mix? And it really ended up in a very, very cool place, and I can't wait for this to get out in the world. After this moment in history, but before this moment in recorded history is presented to you, this will be paired with a lime poppy seed donut from our friends at Johnny Donuts. And I'm having tasted this now, because I wasn't in on that tasting that Fridge and Michael did.
It was
I
a
am
fun tasting, folks.
Really, 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 really excited for that pairing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the poppy seed even is like, as soon as I said that word, I was like, oh, yeah. There's like, I think
Yeah.
it might be more like fennel seed or something
Yeah.
in here, but it
kind
it's
of
there.
creeps through.
you know?
Yeah, that's a good call.
And yeah, you're getting this like bright lime from the donut frosting, but that Meyer lemon undertone in the beer. So you're like, oh man, this citrus is like super complimentary and amazing.
We fucked up not having donuts for this podcast.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. But yeah,
But
kinda
wait.
but
Yeah.
there is liquid donuts. Yeah.
See, I'm really excited to try this because I wasn't aware of this, that what you guys were doing with it before talking with you guys. So
Oh hell yeah.
Paddock was really thrilled at how different the two coffees we selected
Yep.
were. And we actually have a pretty interesting control for this one. We do have the barrel-aged version of this stout that did not get coffee.
cool.
And it's what the coffee contributed here was dessert.
Cool.
Like the coffee really
Cool.
throws a ton of brownie batter.
It's amazing. Chocolate
Wow.
espresso torte. Amazingness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so just to talk a little about the coffee that's in that's a Honduras that is actually a direct trade relationship that we have with a farm in Honduras called Finca Tererito. And that is one where we can trace all the way to the farm and have a good relationship with them. And they're awesome people. They actually have a coffee company out in Atlanta area in Georgia called Alma Coffee.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
The Honduran growers have a roastery in Atlanta.
Yep.
That's what's up.
Yep.
That's like,
I will
Yep.
be there in November. I'm going to try and check that out.
Definitely do it. Yeah, they're awesome. They have
Yeah.
some of the most interesting and delicious natural process Honduras that I've had, and we usually carry it, but we just ran out, so we'll be ordering more pretty soon.
Cool.
and so yeah, talk to us about the coffee so that's the source of the bean.
Yeah,
And
so
then what
this
do
is-
you guys do with it?
So this is one that I kind of made as it's almost like a bridge, like an extended hand out to the dark roast coffee drinkers, because that's a lot of times where I live in the world of light to light medium. And a lot of people don't. There's a rich history here of Alfred Peet creating this kind of like darker, what's called the second crack flavor of coffee, where when you roast coffee, you get to the first crack, and that starts the first development phase of kind of when coffee becomes drinkable.
Right.
Before that, you are still developing sugars. And the body of the coffee, but when you get to development after the first crack or during the first crack, it's not really drinkable before then. And so the second crack is after you get all the way through the first crack, and then it does another crack. And it's actually an audible crack that you can hear.
Yeah.
So that's like when like you see a Ethiopian family doing that home coffee ceremony.
That's
like
the pop,
pops like
pop.
popcorn.
Yep,
that's
exactly.
the first crack.
Yep, that's the first crack.
Huh.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And then if you keep going, it'll reach second crack. So French roast, if there were a third crack, then it would be right there. And it gets all the way to that super kind of charcoaly phase of
Right.
coffee. So
It would be in poor taste, but I am astonished that there's not a coffee company called Second Crack.
Yeah, right?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure there. I know actually that Alfred Pete was wanting to call his place Second Crack.
Oh, really?
I had heard that.
That was
I
like in
heard
the
that,
80s.
yeah.
That would have been really rough.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where his baseline was we get to second crack. And there's something to be said about that because this is, in the cooling tray, second crack is happening. So when I dump it, it's just at the start of second crack. So there is a really rich development that happens at second crack. And this could be wrong.
None of us are not going to know.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But
On the podcast, you're 100% right always. Don't worry.
but I think that second crack was so much more popular in the early 1900s all the way up until, and it's still popular today. I'm not saying it's not anymore, but I think it was because of the quality of coffee that was coming out of the regions in the world. Because when you add the processing that, you don't know how Ethiopia is doing it and then how, how everyone else is doing it. And then you got to ship it, so it's on and making that voyage all the way to the Americas or wherever it's going. You could have mold issues, or you could have different issues with the moisture content. You could have mildew, maybe some water got in there, and now so many coffees are in grain pro bags where they're protected from those outside elements while they're in shipment and while they're sitting in the warehouse, as well as they're covered in burlap. But now that there's so much control and traceability, I think that it's so much easier to have a consistent light to light medium and even a medium roast that produces an excellent flavor. But I think it's a lot of nostalgia for people where they're just like, well, this is coffee to me, growing up, and it's that second crack level. So we did it not because the coffee couldn't handle being roasted at a lighter level. It's just when we took it to this level, like the sugars and like how chocolatey it was just like this cup of dark chocolate that we just couldn't. We're like, all right, we got to do this. And this is that extended hand to the dark coffee roast drinkers. For some people, it's not dark enough, but that's kind of like the extent that we're willing to go.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
I mean,
you drew a line. You said this far, no further.
Yeah. And it is second crack, but it's not beyond that. So
and the brownie batter, bro.
Oh,
yeah.
And you were saying Alfred Pete earlier. That's Pete's coffee.
Pete's
right?
coffee,
yeah.
That's the Pete.
yeah,
The Pete.
yeah,
Wowzers.
You said so much. I want to dig a little deeper in there.
Yeah.
So, what's funny is you just articulated something. I had one of my most exciting tasting experiences ever is back when I was a much more serious taster on the beer side. I got invited to do tasting notes with a bunch of sommeliers and other weird palates for a tea harvest.
Oh, cool.
So the tea harvest had come in, and like one of the things that they discussed at that thing was that part of the reason sort of Anglo tea culture is really into like Earl Grey and these black teas was that like Chinese weren't selling them good shit.
Yeah.
It's like, give them the trash. They're going to over roast it anyways.
Yep.
So that stuck in my head. What's funny is I'd always assumed that Pete's, the Major Dickinson's blend or whatever that people know, right? Being so over the top roasty was because beer is my dominant lens through which I view everything. The reason craft beer was so obnoxious at the beginning was a reaction to this world of beer with no character.
Yeah.
Right? And so if Pete's the late 70s, right? The average American is drinking Maxwell House.
Yep.
And you walk into
Hillsborough.
Yeah, and you walk into a Pete's and it's like this cup of flavors that you never understood from coffee or just a level of intensity you never understood from coffee. So I was like, I bet you it was the same as beer, where it was a reaction to, just needing to differentiate not a little bit from what people were used to get noticed. You had to differentiate, it had to be drastic. So people would be like, yo, have you tried this shit?
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're asking people to change a behavior, right? Like, no, you don't buy the instant stuff from the grocery store. You have to go stand in line at this one place in Berkeley.
Yep.
And and so I'm sure it was potentially some of both, right? That the quality of the product wouldn't have lent itself to doing the kind of delicate processing that you guys do or roasting that you guys do at that point. And you needed to kind of shake people out of their coffee is just I push a button and it comes out. I don't know,
Right.
Yep.
Like the orange one is decaf and the black one is regular, and that's it.
Yep. Absolutely.
So let's get into what we got in our glasses.
Man.
This beer is so amazing. Shout out to Fridge, who birthed this concept, and then Paddock, who birthed this beer, and
Big ups to
you
Paddock.
for
He did the work,
supplying
really.
this
Thank you.
awesome. I mean, also Time did a lot of
Time
the work.
too, yeah.
Shout out to the Wood and Oxygen
And Alex Whitehurst
and
for
Alex
brewing
Whitehurst for brewing the original no chocolate frosted mini donuts were harmed in the making of this pastry stout, which led to no chocolate frosted mini donuts were harmed in the making of this barrel-aged pastry stout. And then you get some coffee in there, and it's just delicious little devil.
It is a
Nice
delicious little
and
devil.
easy. Shout out to May Murray.
Yeah, thank you, May Murray, for dunking a donut into coffee, probably in the 30s at some point.
20s.
It was the 20s. Thank you.
I've been studying.
You've been studying. She had a run as a silent film actress, and in that time, she dunked a donut into coffee. It was the first person to ever do that on film.
Really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
Changed everything.
Yeah.
Donuts
Wow.
and coffee were never the same. But
Wow.
also, like, I think
Dunkin'
you got to
Donuts.
talk about on film because Café du Monde is open when in New Orleans. Like that's open in the previous
Right.
century, right?
A Bellini's not a donut,
Maybe.
Sayre.
You go to hell. Okay, but you're okay. The first person to dunk a circular thing with a hole in the middle.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, change the game.
Right before the Great Depression.
Yeah.
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 I mean, these are two great Depression era things, coffee and donuts.
Yeah.
That was like your whole meal. That was
Yeah.
all you got that day.
Yeah. The donut hole got wider and the donut got thinner.
Yeah. You could wear them as bracelets. Sure wasn't a great time for coffee either.
Yeah. probably
This
not.
beer is
The
incredible.
coffee does so much. This is one where we do, like I say, we have the control,
can
and I
taste
encourage
both,
you to
yeah.
taste this
Yeah.
alongside Scourge. Everybody, we're going to be doing flights with donut pairings this weekend, and the flights will be around as long as the beers are around, where you can taste Delicious Little Devil next to No Chocolate Frosted Mini Donuts Were Harmed in the Making of this barrel-aged pastry stout. And the only difference is the inclusion of the coffee, and
Yeah.
it is night and day.
It changes it up so much.
It's so cool that it adds the dessert.
Yeah.
Like it makes it even more desserty because of the coffee.
It's
Yeah.
super
which is the
desserty. yeah.
opposite thing that the coffee is doing in fresh pots.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the truth. And that's that development level. We're talking first crack and second crack. You know, that
Right.
Ethiopia is ultra light. Honduras, too, has a main characteristic of chocolate in it. And when you roast it light, it's more milky. And then when you roast it dark, it's a little more dark chocolate. But yeah, it's really, really exceptional.
Yeah, definitely nice, like bittersweet coffee mixing with the, you know, like bittersweetness from the malts in this. You know, a little dark chocolate mixed with bittersweet coffee coming through.
It's a really dope blueberry in the finish.
Ooh.
Like really, really fucking good.
Yeah, I
Like,
could see like dark chocolate covered blueberry.
yeah, like
Yeah.
all day. Oh man, it's like, whew. Yeah.
And
These
the
beers are
coffee
so hard
actually-
to nail, and
Yeah.
we nailed it, and I'm so stoked.
It's incredible, folks. But this one actually like toned it down a little bit ABV wise, right?
Right.
I was going to say, what's this at?
This is
Toned
only
it
the
down to 15.2.
Yeah.
to 15.2.
100%.
Making it the second strongest beer we've ever produced.
Wow.
The non-coffee version holds the title.
Wow.
Probably, possibly forever.
Yeah.
As the strongest beer
Like a
at
17?
15.7.
Oh, okay.
Hey man,
That's the biggest for
Never
us.
say never though.
don't pull that thing out unless you plan to bang. Bob.
Exactly.
I think I read like the label or something like that, and I saw the ABV. I was like, "Whoa, no way! I don't think I've ever tried anything."
Yeah, there are probably people listening that didn't know beer could get this strong. And then there's probably old heads who were drinking in the early 2000s just like, that's nothing. You ever got a 750 from the brewery? That's how
They're
you
like,
story,
they're like, I
son.
still got a
Really?
nuclear tactical penguin in my closet.
Yeah.
I have.
Where it should stay.
What's
So
Utopia?
many-
Is that like 17 or?
Well, Utopia's got everybody beat.
Yeah.
Utopia's is like almost 50 proof, I think.
Oh, it's 50? Holy smoke.
It's not 50%. It's almost 50 proof. So it's
Oh, okay.
clocking in
So
around
like
like
20, 23, 25.
No, it's got to be. The brewery makes beers that are in the 20s. So Utopia's has got to be further along than that. I've got a couple of Black Tuesdays in my closet right now. That's the thing. None of that really, to make a really, really strong beer taste so good.
Sidebar: all those beers are gross.
I like Utopias.
I like
for what it is.
my 4 ounces of Utopias I've had in my entire life. I think
Yeah.
I enjoyed 3. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I spent like $15 on one little like 2-ounce pour of it, and I was like, "Aw, this isn't what I wanted it to be." I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't this.
You reach the point in things like that and Nuclear Tactical Penguin and what all these other things where it's just like, y'all know spirits are legal, right? Like
Yeah.
if booze was illegal, then I'm like, more power to these guys. But like I can just walk to the bar.
Yeah.
And like, there's all these people in Kentucky making bourbon, and all these people in Oaxaca making mezcal,
Right.
and like they got
all
us
sell
beat,
you
man.
some.
We're not gonna
Yeah.
win.
Yeah.
I mean, this beer definitely tastes like somebody juiced a chocolate donut and poured an espresso shot with a little bit of maple syrup
was gonna say,
together,
yeah, that
and
maple,
then
yeah.
just a hit of whiskey as well.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
hit, man. It's all in there. And the sweetness is essential to making a beer this strong palatable.
Yep.
Right.
Kind of like a port,
Yeah.
like this is very much a dessert.
Very
beer,
much a dessert. We are all enjoying this beer in 4-ounce glasses, and it's plenty. I've had this glass has been full for minutes and minutes, and it's nowhere near empty. Like you really can split one of these bottles like 4 ways.
Yeah.
And be like,
and
this is nice.
as more than with dessert.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't need.
Can I see that bottle? Actually?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to read.
Not that I'm not going to try
This
and
is some great.
do a pint of this to the face at some point. I'm definitely going to.
More power to you.
Yeah.
Make sure you have designated driver.
Yeah.
Inspired by the advent of the most magical marriage of beverage and confection in the Western world, coffee and donut pastry stout.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I
JJ
love
Stapes with the bars.
Right?
And just like you were saying, the coffee develops. This beer will also develop if you leave it in the bottle
Yes, indeed.
and set her down for a while.
Yeah.
yeah.
Isn't there something about beans needing a little time in the bag after the roast?
Yeah. There's definitely depending on how you're going to be brewing it, there's definitely an amount of time that it has its sweet spot. And I've been seeing more and more, and I can only attest to our style of roaster. We use a Loring Smart Roast, actually made in Santa Rosa, California.
Awesome.
Nice.
Right around the corner from you guys. It's
What? That's dope.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a pretty incredible company, but
Yeah.
really pushing the roasting industry forward. From when I first started hearing about them, they were the greenest roaster on the market. I believe they still are. Again, that could be no longer the case, but using a lot of recycled air, and instead of it being a fluid bed roaster having like a big bed of flames underneath that are just kind of constantly going, there's one burner that's in the back that will heat up air and then it recycles that air through. So a little more of like a convection style.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But our coffees will, before they really start to fall off, the shelf life will extend out to like 4 weeks. I mean, I've even had cups of like a bag of coffee that I found in my car that was like under the seat. It was like, that's 3 months old. I'll give it a shot. See what's going on here.
Yeah.
And there's a slight staleness to it, but nowhere near that. I've had like 1 month, 2 month old coffees before that are on the older style of roasters that are just like gone, completely gone.
Sure.
So, but
How could someone tell their coffee's stale? What would they? What would you be? Is it just less spectacular, or
it is. There's way less of a punch to it. There's way less of a crispness that I can describe. Maybe similar to like what you guys experience with beer.
Some oxidation, perhaps, some staleness.
Definitely, yeah. So So if you open a bag of coffee and it's light roasted and there's oil on it, that's old coffee. So light roast coffee should not have any oils excreting from it. Dark roast, that can happen within a day. Some even come out of the roaster like that, but you got to take it really dark to do that. But light roast, if there's even, you'll see like this little kind of, every bean will have one little spot on it. And if you see that, that means you're working with old coffee. But yeah, there's the sweet spot for us for our espresso is like around 10 days is where we like to start serving our espresso in our cafes, is usually around like 8 days, all the way to like 14 days. It's mellowed out. It's had time to off gas a little bit, and it's mellowed out so that it's ready for what a crazy process it goes through to become espresso. You're talking like tons of pressure, tons of heat, all shoved through this one little disc, and so it's pretty crazy process. Yeah.
And so, best practice for somebody who's just making coffee at home.
Yeah.
Get it as fresh as possible because it's going to take you some time to get through that bag. Or check the date and look for 10 days, 20 days.
I would be okay buying something that's a week old, 10 days old, me personally. But I'll go through a bag a week at home. But if you're going through like one bag a month, obviously try and get as fresh as possible.
And does whole bean versus ground affect that?
Yeah. So I remember some social media friends that ran an experiment a number of years ago, and they tried a home blade grinder, ground on the spot, versus a commercial coffee grinder, super nice, top of the line, that's pre-ground, and sat for a little while. I think it sat for like 2 weeks pre-ground, and then they did a blade grinder on the spot. So a blade grinder spins around. It's not as precise, so you'll be left with some super fine coffee and some like larger chunks that are a little more like kind of French press size when you're gonna French press a pot of coffee. So not to have such a long answer, but if you have a good grinder, definitely freshly ground is always better.
But the result of that was that even the
It was a push.
even
So,
the like
yeah.
inability to grind uniformly
Yep.
was like basically a push for
For
Going
old,
and
like
freshly
really,
grinded,
really
yeah.
well ground coffee.
and if you've got to use so if you've got to use grinds because of what you've got to make coffee at home,
Yep.
buy frequently,
Yep.
grind at the grocery store, and
Yeah, grocery
use them
store
immediately.
might be a maybe because there's everyone else's coffee in there. You know,
Okay,
you've got if you're gonna spend $20 a bag on something that's really nice, you might be buying something that was $12 a
so
bag.
go to Land and Water.
Yeah,
and be
that's
like,
right.
I need
Yeah,
this ground.
That's right. Yeah, you could do that.
And then get it
Absolutely,
ground.
Yeah.
And,
Definitely go to your smaller producers.
but buy in small
Yeah,
questions.
definitely.
buy in small chunks.
Yeah, I think 12 ounce, 10 ounce is really kind of a good mark for it because you're gonna get through it at a good pace. I always say grind fresh, no matter what you have, and most people have at least a blade grinder. And yeah, make it. It is. It's a whole part of your morning. It's
a
that
ritual.
You
Yeah.
know, it's a kind of a fun part of the day to think about, okay, what am I doing today? I got this going on. What was that dream last night? There's just so many things that you're kind of thinking about while you're mindlessly putting together this cup of coffee. So
Nice.
yeah, for sure.
It's a parallel thing that we try to teach people, like treat your beer like groceries, buy enough to sustain you until you're coming back to the grocery store.
Yeah, don't
That way it's not
overstock.
going to get out in your fridge. Like, we'll keep it fresh. We'll keep it cold.
Yep.
And it'll be here waiting for you.
Yep.
So, develop your ritual. Be like, on Sunday, I'm going to go get a beautiful cappuccino from Land and Water and
There
buy
you
my
go.
coffee for the rest of the week.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
And boom.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And it can be fun to maybe you just get a freshly roasted bag, you buy that, take it home, try a little bit, come back a week later, try it then, find that Goldilocks zone, right?
Well,
Right.
and I even have to ask people that come to our roastery. They'll be like, "Hey, what's good on espresso?" And I have to ask, like, when are you using it? Because sometimes I will have roasted it that day, and if they say tomorrow, then I'm going to give you something from last week because that's like hitting the point where it's excellent the following day.
Exactly.
And so we try and do that work for our customers is timing that so that if they are going to buy something last minute, then great. But if they're going to have a few days to let it sit, that's ideal. And you do typically want to let coffee sit 4 to 5 days. So if you're going to, like we sell our coffee at Oliver's Markets and Community Market here locally. So if people go in and they see something that was roasted up the day before or like 3 days before, that's a great sign. That means you're gonna drink it all the way through its prime. So yeah, it's really, really good to have it. Anything under a month, I'm really happy with. So
Yeah,
but we
that's
pull our
awesome.
coffees off the shelf if it's older than like 3 weeks. So
there you go.
Same hustle.
yep.
All about controlling your shelf life yourself. On the flip side of the spectrum, Delicious Little Devil is going to be a great beer to age. Fresh pots, not so much. The Lord knows I've tried. With Delicious Little Devil, what I'm trying to get everybody who might be listening in the mindset of, don't set anything down in your closet without a hypothesis that you're testing. So I'm going to set down a bunch of Delicious Little Devil and then come back to it in 6 months. And I'm going to expect some of that roast to fall off. I expect
Nice.
the beer to be, God, this beer is so perfectly balanced.
Definitely.
Where the intensity is like intense, but you can keep going back for more. I'm expecting the balance to fall off a little bit. I think that roast is going to fall off and things are going to like push towards the sweeter,
Sweet town.
mapley side of things. And that sounds like a good time for me. And I'm going to check
Yeah,
in with
it's
this beer
already-
at like 6 months and then
It's already
definitely
pretty
go a year.
impressive how not hot it is for how
Yeah.
strong it is.
Yeah.
And if that's going to get even more,
Yeah.
it could be dangerous.
The heat is going to mellow over time. It should. That's the hypothesis that I'm going to be setting these bottles down with. Less boozy, a little less roasty, a bit sweeter, and just very delicious.
Dude,
Regardless, whenever you drink it, it's going to be one delicious little devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you haven't smelled your fresh pots in a while,
Yeah.
honeycomb now. Like, that's so fucking cool. It's so
Yeah.
cool too because like we have beers to get this sensory dork about all the time, but
Yeah.
then you introduce this other element, and I'm like back to fucking 2008.
Yeah.
Just like being hella analytical, and
Totally.
and
Helping
we
each
should
other.
say, how do people get land and water coffee in their life?
Yeah, so I mean, you can order it online. You can do direct ship to your house. We ship all over the U.S. You can come by. We're currently over on Pioneer Road. You can stop by and grab a fresh bag of beans there until we are opening our new roastery June 11th. But
Exciting.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the roaster will be switched over yet. But we're at least opening the retail side of it, and then soon to come after that will be the production side. So,
And where's that?
that's going to be over on Cleveland Avenue, over by there's Fogbelt Brewing that we share.
Yeah, right.
That
Next
we
door
share.
neighbors,
Yep,
right?
Yep.
The homies.
Yep, and then Cibo Rustico, which is some of the best little Italian pizza you can have in Santa Rosa, and
Awesome.
yeah, a nice little juicery, and yeah, it's a good spot. We're really excited to be there, and we've always had this idea of wanting to be the hometown hero.
Right.
That's kind of been like at our genesis, or like at our roots, is just like, let's be the coffee company that people go away on vacation to, Portland or wherever they're going. They go to Hawaii or Maine or wherever they're headed, but then like can't wait to get back to Santa Rosa and
Or
have
better
land and
yet,
water.
bring a bag to stun on their friends.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've
Oh,
always
you think you have good coffee here?
Yeah.
Check out this land and water.
Yeah,
right here.
exactly. Yeah. So we've always wanted to be kind of, hopefully we can become the bragging rights of Santa Rosa. In a fun way, obviously.
In a fun way, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
No,
That's
if you're
super
If you're not
cool.
inspiring to do that, then if you're not inspiring to be a credit to your backyard,
that's right.
what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Like-
Yeah.
And it's good to shoot for the stars and have confidence in your product.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's obvious you take incredible care and consideration at every stage, and like you said, it goes all the way back to the tree.
Yep. Yep.
And when you're doing that,
Yeah.
you can expect something good in your cup.
That's the hope. Yep.
Last thing we should say is we are now talking about, with Fresh Pots, a Saison brewed on equipment built in Healdsburg,
True.
Nice.
then blended with coffee roasted on equipment built in Santa Rosa.
Yep.
Like, talk about keeping the dollars, like,
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, the beans still aren't grown here, the malts still aren't grown here, but
Yeah.
like for these two industries, about as good as you can do with making your dollar matter
Yeah.
in Sonoma County.
Yep.
And just fascinating your senses.
Totally.
Would be
Yeah.
to grab you some Fresh Pots this weekend. Oh, and wait, if you grab it this weekend, you get a free donut from Johnny's Donuts, which is more money in the community.
Exactly.
That's right.
Oh, so excited about those free donuts.
And you're like, I'm listening to this after their donut adventure, but Johnny Donuts is still there. If
And you
were
can
hearing
go.
this,
and you
they're
already
there.
came and bought your
Yeah.
4-pack. So this is just a reminder
Just
that
a
in your
reminder.
pocket you have that voucher for a free donut at Johnny's Donuts.
Get
Head
that
over there.
free
Tell them we
donut.
sent you. Enjoy it.
That's right.
Also, they're huge.
Yeah, they
those
are.
are some of the largest,
Those are big boy
most
donuts.
intense donuts I've
Yeah.
ever
Yes,
encountered
yes.
in my
Fridge-sized
40
donuts.
plus years walking the earth.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when I got one, and they're also very good.
These aren't no
delicious.
Depression era donuts.
No.
Yeah. And also downtown, I forgot to mention we have a location down there on 4th Street. So
Yeah.
right in the heart of downtown.
Right in the heart of the
Yeah.
action.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
I just went down there the other day and got
right.
myself an undertow, which you turned me on to.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wednesday night markets are back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Down
Grab
there.
yourself some coffee.
Start with coffee.
Head over to the Wednesday night market.
Drink some HenHouse.
Drink some HenHouse.
Boom.
Love it.
Boom.
Get yourself an undertow.
Yeah. Yeah. You can start spreading that. Yeah. That's a fun drink though.
I love it. It's basically my favorite coffee drink deconstructed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Campano is the whipped cream
Yep.
with the espresso. Undertow is vanilla syrup, cream, espresso layered on top of each other. You drink it, you get the hot, cold, sweet.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's like a fun old like Starbucks drink. To go. Oh, yeah. Hot, cold, sweet, and it's tasty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Max, for coming on the Unruffled
Oh, it was a
podcast.
pleasure,
and
yeah.
thank you for teaching me about the undertow.
Yeah.
Happy to.
And now, Sensory First.
Welcome to Sensory First, where we take a deeper dive under the hood of the beers of the HenHouse Brewing Company. I am the deeply caffeine-addicted Bob from the marketing department, here with
the also deeply caffeine-addicted Zach Kelly, brewmaster.
and we are talking about Fresh Pots, the best dang coffee saison the world has ever seen. My personal favorite beer to ever be brewed at the HenHouse Brewing Company. Back again for 2022. This time featuring a whole bunch of fabulous Ethiopian Yirgacheffe coffee from the Werka Sakaro region in Ethiopia, provided to us by the delightful folks at Santa Rosa's Land and Water Coffee Company. This is a coffee saison, arguably the least traditional saison we have ever brewed until we start getting into like GMO yeast saisons. We'll get there at some point. But for now, this is one of the strangest things that we make, and it is one of my favorite beers I have ever had in my whole life.
Yeah, so we went ahead with our house saison yeast. So we've got our Napoleon yeast. That's a French saison. It ferments hot and fruity and pretty much consumes all of the sugars to create the alcohol in the beer. So we're at about 7.5% on this, on a beer that's only about 15 Plato beer. So
right.
in a pale ale or like an IPA, this would be something closer to like a 6.5%. So we got something a little stronger here. And then we basically just kind of let the coffee shine on this one.
Yeah.
A little bit of wheat for body, a little bit of rye for like a little bit, just a tiny bready backbone to it.
Yeah.
But other than that, we have bittering hops and just straight coffee. So we added our ground coffee actually into the bright tank. So we completely finished fermentation. We centrifuged out all of the yeast and any sort of like leftover hops or anything like that. Pretty much just the yeast, however. And then we did a ground extract straight in our bright tank.
Awesome. So did we like make a cold brew extract, or were we using the coffee to effectively do a cold brew? It was coffee added to the beer, and then we gave it time. Then we added carbon dioxide. Now it's in my glass.
So the beer did the extraction for us.
Right.
So we essentially purged the bright tank, purged all air out of it, added the coffee in bags, like very fine ground, directly into the bright tank, and then we centrifuged the beer on top of it to allow the beer to do the extraction for us.
Wow. That is a really neat way of doing it. Now, I love making cold brew at home, but when I'm making cold brew, that water has 0% ethanol, not 7.4% ethanol. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that changes it up somehow? I mean, this is pretty far out stuff. Cold brew with ethanol. I haven't seen that book published yet. I don't get weirder, different flavors that I would think using if I'm describing ethanol as like a more aggressive solvent than the H2O that I enjoy so much. It just tastes great. Like this batch is delivering my favorite coffee character from the last several batches we brewed. But does the ethanol change things at all, do you think?
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, this is weird science that we're engaging in here.
Yeah, in my experience, I've done coffee beers. This is really one of the first first coffee saison that I've done. And in my career, we've gone between my original brewery that I was at, Keegan Ales in upstate New York. We did a coffee imperial stout, and that was, a darker mocha java blend that was going to be, kind of played more off of those like roasty flavors.
Absolutely.
And when I was at Left Hand Brewing, we also did a mocha java blend that came from Allegro Coffee, which was in Colorado, and I believe they have a West Coast facility as well, but you can literally just go into the store and buy that Left Hand blend.
Right.
So definitely much richer coffees and roasts that I have experience with, and much bigger, sweeter beers. So this is the first time that I've done something with a, super, super estery, saison. And then not only that, but a very light roast. Like these Ethiopian coffees tend to be very plum and red wine forward, in my experience, much more acidic, less roasty and mellow and sweet and chocolatey. So this is a completely different field than I'm used to. But those are some of the notes that I get. I get some, plum and red wine, and those flavors impart really, really nicely.
They're really fabulous. And I love, with most of the beers that you were describing, when you're adding coffee, you're trying to build on some roasty character or some chocolate character that is coming to you from the malt. What's so fun about what Fresh Pots does, and why I was so enraptured with this beer the first time I found it, is because we're using the coffee character to complement and build on the peppery character that totally delightful French saison yeast is imparted into the beer. And you end up with a beer that is not nearly as dark as a stout or a porter. And other additions have been a lot lighter in color than this one. But this one is man, like I loved last year's because I'd been desperate for fresh pots for a number of years. But I really do think this one is an improvement on that. And I think we've tried so many different ways of adding the coffee. I think it's got to be the grounds. I think the coffee grounds added to the bright tank is totally the way to go. And I also assume that is a gigantic pain in the ass. Did you see them pump the grounds out of that? I saw Shane do that once a few years ago. That took a long time.
So we put the grounds into like game bags.
Dope.
They still managed to get out a lot, and you could definitely see like a stratification in what we use. So there was still a pretty decent amount in solution. So we ended up doing like a secondary filtration through like a lenticular cartridge filter.
Okay.
So that got rid of all the solids, but basically there was still, some liquid left in the bottom. And this beer, when you look at it, it's like a kind of on the slightly red side of brown.
Yeah.
And the stuff in the bottom was black. Like you could look in the sight glass and see like a graduation between the colors.
Right.
So luckily it was in bags, so it was a little bit easier to clean. They got very, very heavy. There's no paper filter on these. So you do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you end up having to muscle them out of there, basically by just pulling out the bag and then spraying everything out the bottom and just hoping you get it all.
Yeah, I'm going to say we're clocking like maybe like an SRM 18 off of this. That's a neat color. You don't see a lot of stuff that, frankly, the American Amber Ale is a threatened species at best. You cannot sell an IPA that is this color. And if you're trying to make a dark beer, it's not nearly dark enough. But this kind of color now, people are going to be like, what's up with that when they see it get poured for folks? And that's fun. I see that hopefully getting some more people excited about it. I was really thrilled with kind of the visual trick of having a really yellow beer smell really roasty. But now that you never see beers that are this color, and most IPAs, as we were saying earlier today, looking at some beers, are a pretty light yellow, like light gold. This beer is now going to turn some heads. Although when it first came out in 2015, this color probably wouldn't turn any heads, and now I never see beer this color anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Like we've gone towards a lighter and lighter and lighter color while still getting more and more and more hoppy. We haven't,
right.
And then there was a time where we were on the complete opposite end of that for a few years, where it was just darker and bigger and thicker.
Yeah,
beers, and the middle range of these ambers and these reds and everything is kind of fallen off to the wayside.
Right.
I think one of the fun things about this beer is that it almost drinks as an espresso.
Totally.
It's a lot closer to like an espresso shot, maybe
totally.
with like a little bit of water.
Totally.
Over like a coffee or a beer. It's a really, really interesting middle ground.
Yeah, I want to say that the coffee brings out some of the citrus that the fermentation character creates, and conversely, the Saison yeast is also bringing more citrus out of the coffee than I think I would find if I was having like a glass of our wonderful HenHouse Saison or just a fabulous cup of coffee made with this Yirgacheffe Wurka Sakaro lightly roasted coffee from the good folks at Land and Water.
Yeah, I think it's a fun beer, and it's hopefully something that we can just keep on bringing back if everybody takes well to it.
Please drink it, if not for your taste buds, drink it for me.
Yeah, drink it for Bob.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled with this year's edition, and I think with an even stronger COVID recovery than we were experiencing when we were making this stuff last year, it's in the bag. And we'll be making fresh pots for years to come.
Yeah, get a scone.
Yeah.
Just enjoy.
Yeah, just enjoy this fabulous, totally original coffee beer by the case, please.
Yeah, by the case.
Yeah.
Cheers.
We are getting deep into Delicious Little Devil, our brand new barrel-aged pastry stout featuring coffee from our friends at Land and Water Coffee Company. This beer is really nice. This is the same base beer as no chocolate frosted mini donuts were harmed in the making of this barrel-aged pastry stout, but featuring this fabulous addition of coffee and celebrating the incredible star of the silent screen, Mae Murray, who is the first person credited with ever dunking a donut into a cup of coffee. I love that. It's rad, and the Mae Murray hen is looking at me, and I feel like I need to pay tribute. It is so neat to see what a coffee addition does to this beer. I don't know. I feel like it makes it a little bit heavier, but it provides like some contrasting bitterness, which in turn accentuates the sweetness. My brain is swirling, and the over 15% alcohol by volume is probably a part of that. I couldn't be more thrilled with how this turned out.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost less hot than the regular chocolate barrel-aged pastry stout.
Exactly.
Like somehow there's a little bit less heat, but I mean, it smells like sweet coffee. Like it smells
Right.
like walking into a bakery
It really does.
with their espresso machine just firing.
There need to be more coffee donuts. There's coffee and donuts, but I rarely see that many coffee donuts. This kind of reminds me of some donuts I've had that have had Oreo dust on them, really delivering that like specific kind of crunchy Oreo cookie, chocolate flavor characteristic. I'm really appreciating that. I am really appreciating Daniel Paddock and his fine work because this beer is remarkable and it really stands out amongst all of our other stouts and all of our attempts at nailing pastry stout, whether they were conceptual or wholehearted. We have finally gotten there with these two beautiful beers.
Yeah, we're drinking some really big beers, some really big coffee, and the maple character in this from the 12-month aged barrels that held Kentucky bourbon, whiskey, and then for more than 10 years, and then were repurposed for maturing 100% maple syrup from old-growth Michigan maple orchards. And
Right.
really comes through. The maple in the background like still plays off really nicely with the coffee. You still get a hint of that, like, I don't know, maybe some of that old-fashioned maple donut with like a nice, maybe like a cortado or something going with it, you know?
Sure.
You know, like some sort of like slightly specialty coffee drink, not something that still has an espresso, not something sweet, not some frappuccino, but
Yeah, the espresso-ness really comes through. Getting some cool coffee in here is a big part of this flavor profile. And like selecting, kind of figuring out what roast is going to play with all this stuff is a fascinating exercise. Like, I don't even know how I would begin starting to figure that out. I would just need a bunch of little glasses of beer and a ton of coffees at different roast until I found them. Wow.
yeah, I'm pretty sure the result of this was just some of the production team went to Land and Water and did a cupping.
Awesome.
Which I've never done. It's really fun. You just take tiny little slurps of coffee and let them spill back out of your mouth in a weird way that's hard to get used to. But like,
Right.
yeah, and I think they just kind of let that play with your brain. A little bit of a lighter roast on these coffee beers that we've been doing.
Yeah.
You know, get some more of that acidity, some of that less burnt flavor, or like those less really like roasty characters.
Right. We don't want, like, you don't want the roast to be too assertive and like blow out the chocolate flavors and the chocolate malt that we've put in this beer and the cacao nibs. So I would imagine anyway, you know, I'm okay at food pairing. I'm okay at a lot of these things, but beer just keeps moving further and further out past the edge. Not that long ago, spirit barrel aging was pretty fascinating. And now it's like, yeah, spirit barrels, but then what were those barrels after that? What were those barrels after that? And like, we're going to be like, yeah, so we got whiskey barrels that were used to age maple syrup. Then we emptied that out. Then we filled those with coffee beans. Then we aged the coffee beans in there. Then we emptied that out. Then we put some beer in there. Then we emptied that out. Then we tried to get the flavor of that beer into the next round of maple syrup that we did after that. It keeps going, and it's so exciting to be drinking beer right now. I'm just thrilled with what we're doing. Finding a great maple syrup barrel that was formerly a whiskey barrel that will play great with the vanilla we're using, the coffee we're using, the cacao nibs we're using, and the incredible no chocolate frosted mini donuts were harmed in the making of this pastry stout that we used in there, and getting all of these totally disparate parts to unite into one beautiful abyssal beer darker than the Marianas Trench is what makes my job so damn fun.
Yeah, there's never been a better time to be drinking massive pastry stouts.
These last few years are also the only time in human history you could have been drinking massive pastry stouts, because this is a new invention. And man, the invention is working. I'm so impressed with how this beer has turned out. And once again, just the lack of alcoholic heat is a little terrifying.
Yeah, it's not in the tongue, but it is a little hot in your eyes.
Yeah. You can feel it in your blood. You can feel it in your chest, but your tongue is not telling any secrets. They're like, oh, this chocolate milk's a little intense. It's like you went a little too hard on the chocolate syrup, where you can still kind of see it at the bottom because you've created like a super saturated solution in your milk, and there's just not room for another chocolate molecule to cling onto. And yeah, that is what I'm looking for in a decadent. After I've drank all my Saisons and had all of my IPAs, I just need like 3 or 4 ounces of something sweet, just that little something sweet. I'm going to have this for dessert, hopefully for the rest of my life.
Yeah, pair it with a nice flan.
Yeah. Oh, this would be killer with flan.
Right?
Wow. Yeah. Oh, all that chocolate contrasting all of that vanilla and caramelized sugar. All right, someone's got to be making flan in this town. I'm going to find some flan and make this happen because this is really my idea of a good time. Yeah, God, another success. Huge shout out again to Daniel and our coffee partners, the good folks at Land and Water in Santa Rosa.
Yeah. Can't wait to work with them some more.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.
HenHouse Unruffled was created by Anna Scott. We record at HenHouse Brewing Company's Palace of Barrels in Petaluma, California. Our producer is Brian Henderson, and our associate producers are Josh Staples and Fridge. The music you've been listening to was written and performed by our San Francisco account rep McLean from his album Speechless and Speechless 2, which you can find on Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, and anywhere one finds dope music. If you have a question or comment about this or any episode of HenHouse Unruffled, please let us know by calling 707-347-9425 to leave a message. You can also send an email to podcast@henhousebrewing.com. For more information, visit www.henhousebrewing.com or stop by one of our Bay Area tasting rooms. The voice you've been listening to is Imani Russell Black. Please listen and drink responsibly.